Hi, welcome to Swishing Mindsets. This is Anuradha, and today I'm talking to Beth Watkins. She's American and a huge Bollywood buff, runs the blog Beth Loves Bollywood, and also co-hosts the podcast Filmi Ladies. So, hi, Beth. Wonderful,
Hi,
wonderful to have you here.
absolutely.
And we interacted so many years ago, so it's just great to chat in person now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I think just diving right into it, and like I told you, you're the Bollywood expert here. So the nerves are all mine because I watch it. Of course, I watch Bollywood being from, India, but I don't remember much, I see and I just tend to forget stuff. I don't remember lines and funny scenes. I'm not one of those people.
Mm.
So that's all you now. So, okay. So let's start by, with the usual question that what got you interested in Bollywood in the first place? And can you describe the first time and mostly, most importantly, the feeling that it gave you?
hmm Yeah, so this is almost 20 years now, not quite, but when Bride and Prejudice came out, I was really interested in that film, and the director had made on the website, she had a list of some of the Indian film, conventions and stereotypes that she was using and playing with in her film. And I had never seen any. So other than Monsoon Wedding, that was the only Indian film I'd ever seen. So I'd never seen any popular Hindi films or any other, language cinema. And so I went to my local video store, and because I live in a large college university town in the US, we had a really great video store with lots of international options, and they had hundreds of Indian films. So I just went in and kind of chose some to watch. And I was hooked from the first. So somehow, Indian cinema let me find it, I feel, is how it went. And I just right away was really, I mean, at first it was an aesthetic response, I think. The beautiful visual razzle dazzle, with and the dozens of dancers and the beautiful sets and locations and the costumes and the music, of course. I didn't know any Hindi film music before starting to watch the films, but I have always been musical. I sing, I've had musical training. And I love musicals, what Americans would call musicals, both on the stage and on the screen. So there was so much that just really spoke to my interests and things that I love. And then, of course, the more I learned, the more I wanted to learn and get to know, who these people are and what are these stories and what am I understanding about the culture from this or not. So it just became this huge um kind of pleasure but also learning experience that went together. And I work in a museum. Like, this is how I am. So learning from things that people create is important to me, personally and professionally. And so this really like ticked a bunch of boxes that I have.
What are those boxes really? Like you said, the museum. So is it that, the history of it, where it all started, what it all means?
I love that. I love kind of thinking about what people say about themselves when they create something, whether it's a very specific work of art or it's something more utilitarian, or it's a system, an idea, a philosophy, any of those things. I just really love learning, and I love people. So, and film is a great way to do that. Now, how that had never really occurred to me before, I don't know. Like, I'm not a cinema buff before this. Um, so I've seen way more Indian films than I have American ones, probably at this point, right? So, well, maybe not way more, but I certainly keep better track of the Indian ones than the American ones that I've seen. So, yeah, somehow it just really grabbed me. And you asked me how I feel. The emotional earnestness of, and I'll say specifically Bollywood, because that's what I was watching at first, really just resonated with me, right? Like, people who will sing their heart out is very appealing to me. I love that. I would like to be more like that.
That's so nice. And you mentioned that you've kept count, right, of how many films you watched. So how many you maintain an Excel sheet or something like that?
I do. Yeah, I have a Google spreadsheet. I think I'm at about 1100 now, something like that.
Yeah, and you said, not just Bollywood, it's Indian cinema that you're talking about. So there's Bengali films, and what else do you watch really?
Bengali is my next. So Hindi is the thing I've seen most, then Bengali. I'm up to almost 200 Bengali films. I've seen a very small smattering of Tamil and Telugu, and then like a very like 2 or 3 Malayalam, maybe a couple Punjabi. So and Kannada. So I'm very skewed towards Hindi and Bengali.
Okay, and you said you love musicals and their emotional earnestness. So, for us, we might even be finding it cringe sometimes,
Sure,
So
sure.
I'm sure you do too, because it's so it's interesting because you sound completely like one of us, and completely, except like in some cases, I get that, oh, okay, you see things differently. Like Sholay, I was hearing you on one of the other podcasts, and you said that that's not, you didn't like the Asrani scene, no, the jailer scene.
Oh no, oh
Yeah,
no, no.
and I was like, oh God, because that's one of my favorite parts, And you
Mhm.
said Mera Gaon Mera Desh was better according to you, right?
Yeah, I do like that one better, interestingly. Yeah. And sometimes it's just, excuse me, there's cultural context I still don't have. Of course, no matter what I've tried to learn, I will never be Indian. I will never have grown up in a way that I didn't grow up. So some things just don't, and also I do read subtitles. I'm not fluent in Hindi. I understand some, but so I know that because of my ignorance in various ways, there are things I don't get. And also in that particular case, a friend who grew up in India who very kindly, kind of wanted to talk to me about that particular scene. And he said, you have to understand that our experience of World War II is very different than the American experience of World War II. And I had never really thought about that. And, so Hitler does not mean in India some of what he means in the US, at least as an automatic response, right? Like I grew up thinking of him as the absolute face of evil. I understand now as an adult that there are many, many different experiences of the 1930s and 1940s of various empires and various fascisms. I get now that, the enemy of the British is going to read very differently in India than it does in the United States, particularly a 20th century one. Like India and the US have the British in common as an enemy in other times, but by the early 20th century, it's a little bit different. So that was pretty eye-opening to me. I still think that scene is incredibly cringe. I still don't think Hitler should be used for humor in that way. But that's not my call to make. That's just my personal reaction. I don't care for it. I skip that part when I rewatch Sholay. So,
Yeah,
but
but
that recent movie that came out, whose name I forget, that has the whole Holocaust camp. I think now, if people were to
yeah.
revisit the show, right? So that might kind of help people understand how it lands for someone who grew up in the West. I'm not saying they need to understand that. I'm just saying like some of the conversations around that and the very wide, quite shocked reaction that they had done that in that movie. I think I was like, yeah, that's what I'm getting at. I have not seen that film and I do not plan to, but
Yeah, I haven't seen it either, Bawal. But I'm actually, once now that you mention it, I never took it as, oh, they were using Hitler as for comic relief. I never looked at it that way, because for us, I guess, it's more like a Charlie Chaplin come Hitler kind
right,
of character.
right,
But
right.
now, and I guess in the 80s, 90s, 70s when it came out, I guess we were also not that way. Today, probably even I might look at it like that.
That's right. We all
You
have
know,
changed our minds
we've
about
all
various
have
things
changed.
in the
Yeah,
last
yeah. All
50
our
years. And also, in the English I grew up speaking, you do not use Hitler as like an adjective to mean someone who is strict, but I understand in at least some Indian English that's a you might refer to someone as a Hitler to
right.
mean different.
Absolutely.
And I
I mean,
and I didn't have that reference. So now you would say, like famously in Seinfeld, the soup Nazi, but I would never say the soup Hitler. I just would never say that. But it's just different English, right? And that's fascinating.
yeah, it's pretty fascinating for me right now as we speak.
Yeah.
Uh, because Hitler is evil for us too. I mean, for me too. I mean, no doubt about it. But yeah, I mean, never looked at it like that. Yeah,
Mhm.
hmm, of course. So, you say that you're not very familiar with Hindi, but you are, right? Like you,
I mean, I can understand some. I can read a very little bit, like a child, like a 4-year-old child or 5-year-old child. But yeah, and my Hindi is very heavily skewed towards film dialogue. So when I'm in India, I can understand some of what people are saying if I'm overhearing people on a train or something. I'm not trying to eavesdrop, but you just hear people speaking. But yeah, if someone directly says a sentence to me in Hindi, I very well may not understand it at all. It just
Or,
depends on what it is.
or you
So
might
I'll
answer,
get
respond with a
yeah,
Bollywood dialogue.
I'll give you an example. I was in Lucknow with a friend, and our driver was speaking to her in Hindi, and we were at one of the the historic palaces, and he was warning her about, be careful. And he said, "Ye local admi badtamiz hai," and I laughed because I could understand that from films, right? And then he looked at me and he was like, you could tell he was confused that I understood that.
Yeah, the word Battamiz is like pretty common. Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, the
Yeah.
heroine tells the hero, like, Battamiz ho and all that, so that's
Mm-hmm.
pretty common.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there must be a lot of dialogues, like I meant to ask you later on, but yeah, like since we're talking about it, there must be a lot of one-liners that you know, right? Like, I mean, Shashi Kapoor's your favorite, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the big
yeah,
one, and that's a nice easy
yeah,
one
yeah.
to understand. Grammatically very simple sentence. So
So mere paas maa hai, that's the big one. So what are some
mm-hmm.
others that, which make it to your list?
I don't, there aren't whole sentences that I do usually, but I do love, and I will accidentally say in person, sometimes I'll say bus because that's really useful, but I forget that the people around me don't also know a little bit of movie Hindi, most of them. So it's not very useful. Um, I love courtroom antics in Bollywood. So when people are on the witness stand and someone says, yeah, jute, hey, jute, I can, that I can get, or pointing out a ghost. That's a good one. Like boot, so again, not whole dialogues, but little bits and pieces of vocabulary certainly
Yeah,
have
that sounds like
infiltrated
fun.
my mind.
Yeah, I can imagine you're going bus and everybody's like, why are you calling a bus? I mean, just a bad
Correct.
PJ.
That
Huh.
exact thing has happened. Like you're in your office. Why are you talking about a bus? And you're like, oh, right. Okay.
That's fun. But tell me, you've traveled to India a lot, and was that prompted by your watching Hindi movies, etc.?
It was. So I've been 5 times, which feels like a remarkable miracle in a post-COVID age when I haven't been anywhere for a while. My first trip was actually for my museum job. There's a federal program in the US that gives that funds teachers and educators to go to other countries to, learn more and then bring that back to their classroom. And as a museum educator, I was able to do that. And that trip was to India, very coincidentally, luckily for me. And that trip took us to 10 different cities. So I got this wonderful kind of overview that I didn't have to plan or anything. I just showed up. But then I've been back 4 times subsequently with friends or to meet friends in India who I have met through, blogs and Twitter and things like that. And so I've gotten to go a lot of places and meet lots of people, which has been just really, really fun. And I can't wait to come back. I was hoping to go, last October, November or so, but then COVID again. So I just decided I'd wait a bit, but hopefully soon.
So how was it when the first time you came and the other times you came? And did kind of, whatever you Bollywood taught you, let's say, about India, was any of it true, or how was it?
Yeah, I think it was. And I feel a little bit silly saying that in a way, because if someone said to me, is the United States like what I see in movies and TV, I would, of course, initially say, no, not at all. But of course it is in some ways, right? There are things like even very small scale, like I had a sense of what the roads would be like, of what traffic would be like, because when people are filming outside, that's what you get, right? Usually, generally speaking. Um, I think things like I had a sense of how to adjust like the clothes you see in movies compared to what you see generally, again, speaking about what people are wearing. So I had some sense of that, or like um how houses are set up. I got to learn a little bit about that from movies. Now, obviously, it's exaggerated in a lot of films, like both richness and lack of wealth, right, are very exaggerated in films. But you see there's things about what furniture looks like, how a table is set, what a kitchen looks like some of those things are very much there. I think somewhat about how language is used, right? So you can hear people saying things in real life that people also say in films, even if it's not the big dialogue, it's sort of the side dialogue or how they're calling to each other from other rooms or things like that. So yeah, there was definitely some. And also I don't think anyone had told me this. I don't think I was prepared for how much film music you hear in day-to-day life in India. Because there's radios everywhere, and auto drivers and whoever the bus driver would have, and things like on this first trip, the people who had organized our tour took us to we went to a dinner where then some comedians came out and did impressions of Bollywood scenes and stars. I was the only person who was laughing from the American group because I'm the only one who knew what they were doing. Right. So like it's everywhere. Especially the music, I would say, at least to my observations and my limited experience. So that, and to be, I'll never forget this. We were driving, this is a later trip after Rawan had come out, and Chamak Chalo was on the radio in the car, and I was singing along, and the driver whipped around. He was like, "How do you know this song?" I was like, "Let me tell you." Or if I see, to see, this is funny too, how often you see movie stars' faces on advertisements, right? Around, big, small, everywhere. And to see faces in a place where you are very foreign is a really interesting kind of comfort in a way, right? To like land at an airport and then there's Shah Rukh Khan, giant, you're like, oh, okay, I know where I am. It's a very funny experience. And I'm not saying that makes me wise about India or anything like that. It just, there was a lot that was familiar, some that I expected and some that I did not on my first trip.
Yeah, it's almost like Beth Loves Bollywood is here. So all of Bollywood is welcoming you.
I mean, this Shah Rukh advertisement that I saw was actually in Cochin, but he was a brand partner for it was either a textile place or a jewelry place. I think it was jewelry. I can't remember. But there were literally dozens of these billboards all stacked up on top of each other, and he was giant. I was like, oh yeah, here we are.
Shah Rukh's welcoming you.
Exactly. It's very nice of him. I know he's busy.
No, but you're so right, like these are things which, I don't even realize because Bollywood is actually all around us, wherever you go, the music, you can't escape it.
No. And like when I went, I had only kind of started watching Bengali movies about 10 years ago. So the first time I went to Calcutta after that, same phenomenon, right? Like I saw Sumitra Chatterjee was in advertisements for a bank and other stars I recognized. And then there's a statue of Uttam Kumar outside the Taliganj subway station. I was like, oh, there he is. There's the Mahanayak right there. So it really does. It's really a part of the visual texture of India in a way that, and you do see some of that in movies, right? You see posters for other movies in the background and things like that. But when it's in a movie, you're never exactly sure, is that for the movie or is that what that actually looks like? And it's obviously a combination of both. But I think in the US, either our movie stars are maybe not quite as prominent in printed advertising or TV ads, I think, or at least they didn't used to be. And we've all heard about American stars doing ads in Japan, for example, but it's not as common here for most people. I think that's changing a little bit. And obviously we have the things like the Super Bowl football game once a year where they roll out the very big budget ads and you might get someone in one of those. But typically speaking, our movie stars are not, I think, as prominent a visual part of our kind of everyday texture, at least where I live. Now, maybe if you're in Los Angeles, it's different, but in, a small city in Illinois, like I don't physically see movie star images nearly as often as I do when I'm in India.
Yeah, you're very right, because actually it's just everywhere. Sometimes you're tired of seeing them. You're like, again,
I'm sure.
Every ad, every reality show, every
yeah. I'm sure it kind of loses its impact after a while.
Yeah. Sometimes you're like, I think I need a break from this guy, But like Shah Rukh Khan, I think we're starved. We haven't seen him for so long, So
I had gone to the Indian grocery the other day here and gotten some of they have these little things of ice cream like this, and I love ice cream. And I opened one the other day, and Ranveer Singh was under the lid. I was like, oh, hello, I didn't know he would be there. I'm not up on, and that's the other thing being here, I'm not aware of who's advertising what necessarily. So when I go to India, it's kind of a surprise to me. Or if I'm in the grocery store and see, Preeti Zinta was on a package of Maggi noodles once, I remember. And I was like, oh, I know her. You just never know.
Yeah, so I'm saying like it's must be almost offensive. I mean, don't you get offended? I would if I'm in a cab and I'm singing Chammak Challo, I'm singing along, and the guy looks at me like, "How do you know it?" And you would be like, "Why would I not know it?" You know?
No, I understand. I mean, I am a very pale white person. I realize that I stand out, and even if I try to speak Hindi, I have a horrible American accent. So I understand how unusual I am in most people's day-to-day experience, actually on the
I'm
ground in
sure.
India, right? And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
I'm
on the
sure.
internet it's very different, right? Because people obviously, especially after RRR, people are aware that around the world people are watching Indian movies, but actually to be in it, to show up in India is I think a little bit unusual still, because it's
Yeah,
not
but
the
in
easiest
your
place
head,
to, it's just
yeah, but
far.
in your head,
Well,
you
right.
must, huh? Sorry.
In my head, it's very different. Yes.
Yeah, in your head it's very different because you kind of you're at home, I guess, in some way, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything's familiar, the songs are familiar,
Yeah.
the roads are familiar,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, I remember the last time we interacted, it was because I think Shah Rukh Khan's concert was cancelled, and
Mm.
he was supposed to, I think, go to Germany or something, and that was cancelled, and all the fan clubs were, they were very, very disappointed. So tell me,
Mm.
are you in touch at all? Do you have any idea of the craze for Bollywood, and are you part of any of these groups and other, foreigners? Well, sorry, lack of a better word, who love
Yeah, no,
Bollywood
that's a good word.
like you? Yeah.
I'm not active in any particularly like formal groups. I feel like my hunch is that the rise of Twitter really kind of made a lot of that less necessary. For example, there was an English language web forum called Bollywood that a lot of people I know were a part of that back in the very early days of blogging and things like 2005, back in that kind of era. There was a German language one where, where a lot of those people met each other. Um, I don't know if those even still are maintained. I hope they are there for archival purposes, because there's a lot of great, interesting content there, but of people, people talking about films and things. Um, yeah, I'm not a part of any formally organized groups, but I think we all kind of find each other on Twitter and things like that. And you know, I am no fan of Elon Musk, and I hate what he's doing to Twitter, but I am so loath to give it up because it has meant so much to me as a way to interact with people. And I don't know what's going to happen if all of us leave. Is everyone going to go to Blue Sky, or where are we? So I think there's so many ways to be in touch now that maybe I would guess some of those groups have kind of dissipated. If not, even if they kind of still exist, they're not as active because you have other ways to get in touch. And things like you could have your own WhatsApp group of your favorite people to talk to about films. Now, I don't do that, but I do have email threads with various people, or there's certain people I always message about certain things. But yeah, I think I suspect it has dispersed, but I don't really know.
Yeah, I'm sure. And but tell me, you mentioned WhatsApp groups and other threads, etc. So, are you on a lot of them? How many would you be on?
No, I'm not. I'm in very few. So I have there's a couple WhatsApp threads I'm with my podcast co-host Pitu. We have various people that we've had on the show or whatever that we are in touch with about various things, but yeah, mostly I'm on Twitter still. I do have a Blue Sky account. I haven't used it a whole lot yet, but I can see there's some familiar friends from Twitter who are also there now, so maybe that will grow. But yeah, in terms of threads and things, very few, very few. And they're all people I actually know that I've met in real life, or have talked with for, over a decade, usually on the internet in some way or another. So these are people I do actually know.
Yeah, but it's so interesting because I was following you on Twitter, and I feel like when you're talking, I know your friends. You know,
Mhm.
I feel like I know your friends. I know who you're talking about. It's so strange,
Yeah,
It's so
isn't it
strange.
funny?
It's very funny because I was following you on Twitter trying to see what you've been up to and,
Mm.
basically preparing for this. And I came across the Khandan podcast and
Yes.
I just love it, It's,
Oh, good. Yeah.
yeah.
And those
So,
are all I think that you know, they all knew each other for a long time from blogs and things as well. Like I've known
oh,
them for over 15
yeah,
years, for
yeah. So that's
example.
what,
So it's
when you're saying that, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe Beth is talking about them. So,
yeah.
because see,
Yep.
there's so much information, because I know that you
So
guys went
much.
and saw Kisi Ka Bhai, Kisi Ki Jaan,
Oh,
you
we
know?
did. Oh, that was so awful.
that was such a fun episode, really, to
Oh,
listen
good.
to.
That's good. And we happened to all be in, well, two of them live in London, but then Amrita was visiting and I was visiting. So we converged and they had gotten a little studio space. So we got to do that one in person, which was fun.
Yeah, maybe for the benefit of whoever's watching this, maybe you can give us a rundown of what you thought of the film.
Oh, sure.
And Salman
Well,
Khan.
yeah, he's not my favorite. I will say that. And I apologies to Khandan podcast host Asim, who's a dear friend. I don't understand the appeal of Salman Khan, especially now. Um, I appreciate that 30 years ago or 25 years ago and all that there were different kind of heroes that were of interest and that he represents certain things, but he does not land for me. And then I do think he's a horrible person. um, and sometimes I can put that aside with stars and sometimes I can't. And because I'm not that interested in him as an actor, I don't see any need to turn my brain into a pretzel to figure out what to do about him. I don't like him. That said, he is entertaining in films sometimes, but I do not go to films for him. And so I went to go see that one in the theater to be with my friends. And it was a stinker. That's a really bad movie. The plot is silly. I think that everyone they got to cast around him, with one or two exceptions, is quite bad, or at least was very lackluster in this film. He has nothing with the heroine. Like it's just why it's just a waste of everybody's resources, I think.
I didn't even bother seeing it because I
No,
don't have a
no,
filmy podcast to run, so I didn't even
right.
bother.
Yeah, no, and I would not have seen it if I was not, getting to do this with good friends. So that was,
Yeah,
although
absolutely.
that
Yeah,
said, I will go to the cinema to watch things sometimes just for the experience of the cinema. I love going to the cinema. So especially, now that it is generally safe again, and sometimes so not all the films come to where I live. So sometimes I don't have to make the choice because I don't get the opportunity, but often I will just go because I like to go to the cinema. It's fun. So
yeah, and it sounded like you all had a lot of fun even during this screening.
oh yeah.
So
Oh
a lot
yeah,
of dancing and a lot of fun happening. So
exactly.
yeah, I sound like a complete stalker. Like, why do I know all this?
No. But I put this out there publicly and you were doing research. So
Yeah,
seems normal. It seems normal to me.
I'm not going to stop. I really enjoy that podcast. Yeah. So, but anyway, tell me, so you watch a lot of films in the theater?
Mhm.
Where do you watch them really? Is it like with an NRI audience? Is it like with other?
Yeah. I think it is usually, so I'm saying this based on what I overhear and how, accents basically. So I do think here the most significant portion of the audience for Indian films is NRIs. I do also definitely know, American born Desis who go, but based on what I overhear, I think it's mostly NRIs. And I should say for listeners, I live in a town that has a very large university that is very heavily focused in some ways towards engineering and sciences. There's a huge Indian population in this town. And I do mean Indian American, but I do also mean from India. So both students and faculty. And then of course, other people as well, like people who just live in this town. And then there's another university about an hour away that has the international headquarters of a large company. And they also have a very huge Indian born workforce who live there. So because of these kind of industries or opportunities in these towns, there's a large Indian population here, which is why the movies come here. So often when I'm in the theater, yeah, and people will ask me, like when I saw Rocky or Rani, when I went to see that at the end of July, a man sat next to me, and he was like, again, you could see he was like, what is a white person doing here? And he started talking to me, and he was Indian but working in Prague, but then was visiting his family who happened to live in the town where this movie was, in Illinois. So that was funny. So
At this
he had a
point,
lot of
I'm like, they're just mean, they're just mean. Yeah. They can't do that to you.
it's okay. I don't at first it was, the American Midwest is a little more of a reserved place. Like we're outgoing Americans in some way, but we're a little more reserved. So just chatting with a stranger at the movie theater is not, you wouldn't necessarily assume that's going to happen like you might maybe in, I don't know, in the South or something. But No, people, I understand why people are curious, and no one has ever been, I don't consider it rude. It really is. I can see why they're surprised. And sometimes they every now and again, like at the end of a movie, they'll ask me what I thought, and then they'll, kind of share their opinions. And that's always interesting because of course they bring
Yeah,
knowledge to it that
I
I
was
don't
going to
have.
say
So
that. I'm sure they're
mhm.
secretly very pleased, being Indians, or somebody else is watching our movies. So
I that is the sense I get overall. Yeah, I do think, and that has stayed the same, I would say, in my almost 20 years watching Hindi cinema, is that even now, I think Indians in the US, which is really all I can speak to, are still surprised to see, to know that people, and that there are people who watch more than just a few, that there are people who like will come to the cinema to see a new one and not just a Ray film at a university class or an art screening, or they haven't just seen Sholay at a retrospective thing or whatever. So that these are, and they haven't just seen RRR, right? So I think that I understand that it is surprising. And sharing culture is great. So I think I absolutely understand why people have questions about it. And every now and again, I will, I will chat with people and they know more about American movies than I do because they've watched more than I have, right? So we have a nice little exchange moment.
yeah, absolutely, because we've grown up in a diet of Hollywood movies.
Right,
I mean, of course,
right.
Bollywood and Indian cinema as well, but a
Hmm.
lot of Hollywood, especially the musicals
Hmm.
as you're growing up, and
Hmm.
a lot of stuff
Yeah.
even now. Yeah.
And I love that
So,
we have that kind of some of those experiences in common despite being on the opposite sides of the planet. It's like that's pretty amazing, really. It truly is, especially before the internet, right? Like you and I are both old enough that our childhoods were not shaped by, we were not on Twitter when we were 10 years old, so but yet we still have some of these roots.
yeah, that's very true. Yeah, when the world was not such a small place, but we still,
Right.
it's a shared culture. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
So tell me, is there a Beth before Bollywood and Beth after Bollywood? How
It's
has it
when I
shaped you?
yeah, when I saw that question, that's very perceptive because I do kind of think
Yeah,
of my
because I
life
thought
that way.
I didn't want to spring it on you. I thought maybe I should give you some time to think about it.
Yeah, it's very true because I sometimes I think like, what did I do with my time in 2003 before I had seen an Indian film, right? Like, what was I doing? So it does take up I do spend a lot of my time and kind of mental energy on Indian cinema. Yeah, I don't know. I suspect I'm essentially the same person, but also if you had told me then you're going to go to India, you're going to see the Arabian Sea from the coast of Mumbai. Like I would not have believed you. I wouldn't have thought that was possible. To know that I have dear friends who are, who grew up in India, who I'd not met in real life for years until we were already friends before we had met in real life, that kind of thing. But also that parallels and is only made possible by the rise of the internet and specifically social media, right? So like if I got into Indian cinema in 1995, I might find some forums about it, but like sharing pictures would have been much harder. You could email people, but like it just wouldn't have been the same. So this was very coincident with tools and resources that were available to many of us, right? So this could not have happened without the internet. So it's kind of those two things together, really. But also, I think if you had told me even in the year 2000 that I would have a significant, and I don't like the word hobby for some reason. I don't know why, but this sort of second area of my life that I put a lot of my brain power and my emotional life into outside of my, my paid job, that was enabled by the internet. I'm not sure I would have believed that either because we just didn't know what the internet was going to be like. And we still don't know what it'll be next, of course. But um, yeah, no, I definitely wouldn't have believed you. And Americans that I meet are like, you what? They just think, oh, you write sometimes for newspapers in India? Wow. Like, whereas to me, I'm like, well, yeah, of course I do. That's totally normal. And then you're like, oh, no, it's not. That's not totally normal. But again, that, people have increasingly have involvements in all sorts of things in different places. And for example, when COVID hit here and people started doing those Netflix viewing parties, right? That the Netflix app enabled, I was like, we've been doing that for years in the Bollywood community. We would just pick a time, and where everybody was, you line up and you just kind of start on the hour or whatever, and everybody's watching the film together, and we're like talking on Twitter or whatever, or Google Chat, or remember Google Wave, I think it was called. They had that like group chatting thing a long time ago. So we've been doing global watch-alongs for ages. I was like, oh, we're ready for the pandemic. We can handle that. We can handle socializing during the pandemic. So, it really has been a remarkable this is kind of a cheesy word, but it's been a gift, right? To get to learn these things and meet people and share in this and learn and just enjoy the pleasure from the films is and then everything else that spins out from it is really amazing.
Yeah, and most of the time it's Bollywood always ends on a happy note, right? All's well that ends well, So it's
That's right. That's right. And so far that's kind of been my experience. I'm sure I'm lucky. I know not everyone who is active on the internet has good experiences, especially women, of course, right? And I have been quite lucky. People are excited to share and have fun together, in my experience. And I'm sure not all fandoms are like that either, right? Like I hear, for example, from women friends who are Star Wars fans, like how awful some of the, how misogynistic that can be, for example. So, I feel very lucky.
Yeah, to each their own, but like I don't even watch films that I know everybody's gonna die in the end. I'm like, I can't take it. I can't be emotionally invested and then just feel sad at the end.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Like I don't watch people are asking me if I was going to go see Oppenheimer, and I was like, no, absolutely not. I don't want to sit and think about those things right now. Maybe ever, but definitely not right now. I don't want to.
Yeah, but tell me what this the Globathon sounds great. All of you watching together.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what I was going to ask you. Like when RRR suddenly became this huge deal abroad in the West and all that, you must have felt superior. Listen, I mean, you guys are finding out now.
People, yeah. Although I will admit to you and your listeners, I'm not a big fan of RRR. I have to say, like it's just I think they're much better Telugu masala films out there, like Bahubali. I much prefer Bahubali, for example. I don't think RRR is terribly good. I should say I can't remember why I didn't get to see it in the cinema. It did come here and I didn't get to go to it for some reason, but so I saw it on Netflix dubbed into Hindi with English subtitles. So I understand. I don't love dubbing. I know that a lot of the stars did their own dubbing for that film, at least, so that's good, but dubbing is very distracting to me. I would much rather just read and then hear, to have the sound match the mouths.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But and I know seeing it on the small screen in my house is not going to be the same as seeing it in the cinema. But I did have people who are like, "What is RRR? Is that Bollywood?" So I have to kind of explain some of that and that all. And I do have some acquaintances here who watched it and were like, "That was amazing. Can you recommend something else to me?" And I was like, "Yes, go watch Bahubali." So. And I have friends in Australia, for example, who really they started with Hindi films, but then they moved into Telugu and got really into Telugu cinema, which I never have. It's never really grabbed me for whatever reason, the things that I've seen. So yeah, to each their own, like you said.
Yeah. And tell me, when you go to watch these movies in the hall, so do you go alone? Do you go with friends? And sorry.
Oh, either. I will go by myself if no one wants to go with me. Usually there's someone who will go, and actually a friend has just moved back to town who really likes Indian movies. So I'm hoping to, once she's settled in, I will get her. I think we're going to go see Jaan next week, for example. So I think I've got a new viewing companion in town, but I'm very happy to go by myself as well. It's fine.
Okay. And what is it like over there? Because, like here, when I went to see Pathan the first time, it was fantastic because, people were dancing and everybody was laughing at every dialogue, repeating, commenting, And I saw it another second time. I saw it and the hall was absolutely quiet and I just did not enjoy it as much,
Oh, that's not as fun.
Yeah. So, so how is it there, like, with the audience?
It's not anywhere near as exuberant as it is in India, that I have experienced. Now, part of that could also be because of where I am. I'm not in a big city in the US. So I don't know, for example, if in Chicago, which is my next the biggest city close to me, if you get a nice jammed full, like for Pathan, would that have been really boisterous in Chicago? I imagine it may have. here it's usually, there's a lot of chatter. And as a person who likes to talk to my friends during the movie, that is one of the things I appreciate about Indian cinema culture, is that you can talk during the movie. That is very frowned upon in the United States, but in the Indian movies, we do it and it's fine. I have occasionally seen people kind of get up and dance a little bit, but nothing too major here, unfortunately. So that experience is very watered down, I think, but it's still more lively than the average US movie, I would say.
It's a bit watered
In
down
my
in India as well. You don't see that as much, but you do find it in a few halls. And if you know where to go, you do get that experience. So, have you had that experience when you visited India in the single screen cinema,
I
etc.?
have never been to a single screen. I have only been to multiplexes, unfortunately. So that is still on my list of things to do. And obviously I would do it many, many times. So next time in India, if anyone wants to take me, please take me under your wing and I will go with you and I will have so much fun.
Yeah,
I
I
think
would
sometimes people
be.
don't believe me either. They're like, you don't want to go to that. I'm like, yes, I do. Yes, I do want to.
Yeah, of course you want to. Because I
Yeah.
remember, even I'm not a huge fan of Salman Khan, or not a fan at all, actually. But I remember
Mhm.
seeing, I think it was, which was that movie? Bodyguard, I think, with,
Oh, sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
Kareena Kapoor. I remember seeing that in one of the single screens just right before Eid. And it was crazy because he
That's
didn't
the
even
time to
come
go,
on.
right?
Yeah, yeah, he didn't even come on screen. It was just a silhouette and everybody was screaming. And everybody even exited the hall. When they exited, they were still screaming.
I love it. I love it. I mean, there is something, it's fun to have that experience and that reaction yourself, but then when other people are also having it, there is something about the group energy that's very real. And I think that's one of the things cinema can really still offer us if we will still choose to go see it in the group setting. Like humans congregate for a reason, right? And that this shared experience is really fun. That said, if you are the one person who doesn't like the film, I'm sure it's a real drag to be around everyone who's like
Yeah,
losing their
yeah.
minds.
Because
But
that happened when I went to see Jai Ho in the hall, and everybody was,
mm,
laughing at every joke, and I'm like, what's wrong with them? You know, that's
yeah,
happened too. Yeah.
I do think that so again, because I'm relying on subtitles, don't take this as true necessarily, but my impression is that there are a lot of jokes that don't land with the audiences here. But that would make sense, right? If a movie is basically written for people in India, then even Indians who live somewhere else are not going to have exactly the same reaction, depending maybe on how long they've been gone or where else they've lived or whatever, right? So I can see that. I mean, it's like things that are written for an American audience, whatever that means, like don't always land with me either. So both of our countries are way too big to generalize, right? So sometimes I really will love, I do actually love hearing how other people in the hall react, because they'll like shout back at the screen when they don't like a joke, or you'll hear someone go, "Are yar," like just some line and they hate it or whatever. So or they'll make some comment about the hero when he comes on screen or whatever. And that's great. That is I mean, that is a priceless learning opportunity and it's just so much fun. I love that people just react.
Yeah, that's really fun actually. That's the whole fun of watching it in a hall. I've
Mm-hmm.
had friends
Mm-hmm.
talking to the audience and talking to the hero and saying, listen, don't do this, you know, like
Yeah. Yeah.
completely involved. So anyway, so tell me, who's your favorite Khan, if you have a, favorite Khan at all? Shah Rukh, I'm sure.
Shah
If,
Rukh. Yeah, no doubt.
yeah, tell
Hands
me
down.
why.
Um,
If you can,
and
if you can,
yeah, it's kind of changed over the years too. So I will admit I think the first film of his I saw was Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, and I didn't really, I knew he was a big deal, right? Like I had read enough to understand that and that would have been 2005 for me. So like, this is the guy. Um, and I didn't get it. And it took me a couple more movies. And I think it was Kalho Naho, interestingly, where I was like, oh, now I get it. And that is not a favorite of mine. When I've rewatched it kind of recently, actually, and I was like, yeah, I don't, it's fine, but it's not a favorite of mine. But that Pretty Woman song where they're dancing through the streets of New York and he's got the gospel choir and the big American flag, like that. I want someone to write a PhD thesis about that song. Like the multiculturalism of that song is very interesting to me. But Yeah, somewhere in there, I got it. He and I should state too, it's not his romantic roles that are my favorites. Like I don't care about DDLJ. Kuch Kuch Hota Hai I kind of like, but still, but like it's not my favorite. But his he's so much fun to watch. He's always doing something. And even if I understand why people call him hammy. I get it. It works for me, and I just love that he's throwing in a thoughtful way. He's not just doing anything and seeing what sticks. He's very specifically doing things. I think he's at least of that generation and of several others, he's the most interested in being an actor as well as being a star, if you want to separate those two things, right? And I really like that about him. I like the experiment. I like that he will experiment. And I like that about Amir too, actually. Like he does some different kinds of things sometimes. And I do like Amir quite a bit, actually. But there's no Khan like Shah Rukh for me. He's the one.
And you like Rani Mukherjee too, right?
Oh, I do love Rani Mukherjee. I stay very far away from celebrity interviews. I know that she says a lot of not great things in interviews sometimes, but as a performer, yeah, I really love her. I think she's great. I'm sorry that she doesn't do as much now as she used to. But I have not seen her latest, what's it called? Norway, Mrs. Chatterjee
Yeah, Mrs. Chatterjee versus Norway, yeah.
versus Norway, right? I would like to see
Yeah.
that. I need to see that, but I think and I haven't seen Mardani too for some reason. I think I just thought it might be a little bleak. But I do love her very much. It's funny to keep hanging on to these favorites from a while ago, but yeah, those are definitely
But
two of
the
my
80s
tops.
are the 80s are your favorite era, right?
70s
70s,
and early 80s. Yeah.
70s
Yep.
and early 80s.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about that. Like which films and why,
I
which
mean,
heroes,
yeah,
actors.
so if you just conjure up your favorite Manmohan Desai film, that's what I love. That sort of full tilt masala where so many things are happening, but they are being all like directed in ways that are towards a purpose. And like it's not just a free-for-all, but there's this massive sense of fun. There's so much going on. You've got all those great character actors from the 70s. Like every time Iftikhar shows up, I am so happy. You get the music is great. I just love all of those people. I think the stories of things like I'm not going to know the right formal terms sort of in Indian political philosophy and things, but like the multiculturalism of those films is so important. And your country and mine have both had serious forgetting about, we have to let other people be, they have a right to be here as well. They have a right to full participation in the country and all those, this sort of small R republic aspect of some of these films I think is really wonderful, or even the ones that are not at the national scale but are more sort of an interpersonal about openness and acceptance. I think that's really wonderful, but I just find them massively entertaining. I think they're so interesting and there's so much going on in them that you can watch them again and again and find all these interesting things. But yeah, people Indians here, when I tell them that the 70s are my favorite, they're like, oh, and I'll say, Amar Akbar Anthony. They're like, oh yeah, that's fun. I'm like, yeah.
I've rewatched Cars a couple of months back, and it was such fun. Yeah, you've seen that one?
Mhm. I
Okay.
have. It's been a while, but yeah. And I mean, Rishi Kapoor at his height is a great gift too, right? He's such a good entertainer.
Yeah,
No
what
one
about
does songs.
yeah, all the songs really.
Mm.
So tell me, are you also watching OTT? A lot of good actors and women,
Yeah,
men.
there's definitely some I miss. I believe there are some of the Indian services we can't get here, I think, or at least maybe I'm wrong about that, but there's things like on Sony. I don't think I have access to those currently, but if it's on Netflix, I will certainly try to watch it. So Raj Kumar's latest
Guns
oh,
and
what's it?
Gulab, I think.
Yeah, Guns N'
Yeah.
Roses. Like that's on my list of things to watch. I haven't seen it yet, but yeah, most of those I will try to watch. I really liked Monica, Oh My Darling, for example. I thought that was really great. I'm
Oh,
looking forward to
the ending was crazy.
yeah, I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to Karina's debut on OTT coming here shortly.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I do try to watch a lot of those unless I think they are going to be I think I've said this word already, but bleak. I don't have a lot of stomach for like a gangster thing if there's no humor as well, or like police dramas. Like I'm not as into that these days, but certainly if I think there's going to be, if it's like a period drama, I will love it. Usually, yeah, I just need it not to be relentlessly depressing. Otherwise, I'm usually in.
I don't know if you've seen Mirzapur and Family Man. Those are my,
No, but I've heard great things about
oh
both
yeah,
those. Yeah.
they're super. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that these are giving opportunities to more actors. I think that's really, really wonderful. And directors and writers and choreographers and everybody, right? Like it really is broadening the kinds of things that can be done. And I hope that will just continue, because I think it's a little hard to stay on top of everything, but that's not an actual problem. That is a delight. So I love that these opportunities keep expanding. It's great.
And I believe you didn't. I mean, I think you didn't enjoy Rocky and Rani so much, right?
I yeah,
I'm sorry if I'm sounding accusatory.
no, 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 not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
The hesitation in my answer is because most everyone I know really loved it, and some people I have the hugest respect for have seen it 5 or 6 times. I am not, that's not my response, but also so that makes me wonder, what maybe knowledge do I not have that makes it not land with me, or what context do I not have or something. So I would like to watch it again, actually,
No, I
maybe
can
in
tell
another
you
couple months.
actually.
And
I can
oh,
tell
tell
you.
me, please.
Yeah, I'll tell you. It's because, we've not had like a big Bollywood movie for a long time.
Hmm.
And it's also a bit woke. It makes the right noises about the right things.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I can like it, being this person
Hmm.
who's a little progressive. I can say, yes, I
Hmm.
love it. And it's got all the old Hindi movies, songs, and Dharmendra, and
Hmm.
everybody,
Hmm.
everybody is there. So it's just
Hmm.
such a celebration. It's got all the color,
Yeah. Very
and
colorful.
it's
Very
all the
pretty.
dancing. So, even though
Yeah.
we've started appreciating intelligent cinema, somehow you just want to go and enjoy like a big Bollywood musical. And if it's a little progressive,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
so why not? So, I mean, that was
My
my thing. I
my
don't think it's
my
perfect though. I really don't think it's perfect, because
yeah.
Shabana Azmi just waltzes off with Dharmendra, and he's got a wife at home. Nobody even mentions it. It's
That
I
was
don't understand.
fascinating. Yeah. I kind of liked that, but I was also like, huh? Like Jaya just sort of steps back and she's like, okay, but like,
Yeah, so I didn't get that. Yeah.
for me, the thing that has stuck, that kind of hasn't worked for me, and I do need to go and do some reading about this, to see what other people have to say. I feel that asking so what I understood to be happening is that a smart, professional, liberal woman was supposed to find this guy cute. um and it's not that Rocky, it's not because of his family. Exactly. I feel that Rocky is willfully ignorant. And that bothers me, that she's supposed to put up with someone who is willfully ignorant. Because, again, both of our countries are hurtling over the cliff of fascism because of willful ignorance. This is not cute. This is, in fact, very dangerous. It's dangerous for women. It's dangerous for a lot of other minoritized communities. Like, so I don't, when there's that scene where she talks about the Constitution, he's like, oh, I've never read it. You're like, that's not funny. you know and I understand that he is learning and growing, and this is kind of new for him and whatever, but like I don't see that relationship lasting very long. Like I think there's a reason it ends with a wedding, right? Like I don't feel like those two are going to have a great a great go of it. But I think that for me, if we had seen a little more, I don't know, kind of a little more investigation of kind of why he's like that, about some of his knowledge and attitudes, and some of it's perfectly well explained, right? Like he grew up in an abusive house, his family is terrible, and there's no qualm about that, right? They're clearly terrible, and like so I like that. And I love that the movie gives these rich backstories to the older characters, both the parents and the grandparents. I thought that was wonderful, like especially the arc around Rani's dad. That was beautiful. So there's a lot I do really like about the movie, and of course it's always a treat to see Dharmendra and Shabana Jaya Bachchan, I'm kind of like neither here nor there about at this point. Like I thought she did a good job with that role, kind of playing roles that her husband has done. But especially Dharmendra and Shabana, I was very glad to see them. But yeah, so there's a lot I like about that movie. But that kind of the romance of the youngest generation, and maybe what we're supposed to think about how that works. I have a real like kind of about, but I do appreciate that Karan Johar is usually, well, I should say always, he's always trying something in his films, right? He's got ideas that he is working out and putting out there for us to respond to. And I really like that. So I'm very glad it's done well.
Yeah, no, I'm inclined
That's
to agree with
important.
you, with
Yeah.
your assessment. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So I'm not against it, but it's not been my, kind of, it's not rocked my world the way it has for some of my friends. So yeah.
yeah, no, I completely get that.
Mm.
And we can't not talk about the family tree that you update.
Oh, yes. The Kapoor family tree, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, but it's fantastic. So what got you started? I know it started with the book on Kapoors, right, by Madhu Jain.
Yeah.
I've read that
Yeah,
book
there's
twice. I just love it.
Oh
So
yeah, I need to reread it actually now that I
yeah,
know a lot more. Yeah, so I think she has a family tree in the book if I recall, but I had to I'm
yeah,
one of
she
those
did.
people that if I write something by hand, I will remember it better. So like I actually kind of wrote my own, and then for some reason I just decided to make it a graphic using Adobe InDesign, because I do a little bit of that for work. And I was like, I need to figure, but every time you find one person and you find three more, like it will not stop. But the fact that, for me, this debate about nepotism is asinine because it is obviously nepotistic. I don't see how anyone can claim the film industry, and I should pluralize that, right? The film industries in India are not nepotistic. They very clearly are. No one is questioning, and no one is questioning why they're nepotistic, really. Like, I don't, obviously lots of businesses are nepotistic. This is the one that we're talking about. So like, I just, that's not why I made it, but I hope that it is helpful for some people who maybe think that it's not that nepotistic, and you're like, please take a look at this. And those are mostly in there. I've got actors, like I haven't even put down a lot of the producers and musicians, and like, it's absolutely mind-boggling.
What was some surprising connections that you found? Because if I also follow this, it's very interesting for me as well. And I saw yours and I was like, right, okay, so these people are related. Or if you hear a random interview, like, oh, okay, Manish Malhotra is related to David Dhawan. Okay, I didn't know
Right.
his cousin is married.
Right.
So
Right. And
yeah.
I think for me, one of the things that's been interesting is, so when you are brand new to Bollywood and you realize that everyone's last name is either Khan or Kapoor, and people are like, so then you learn all the Kapoors are related, mostly. But then people are like, oh no, the Khans aren't related. And you're like, wait, what? Like trying to figure out, but then you tease and tease and tease and like, well, some of them are, not all of them, but and obviously not all of anyone is related, but it is just really fascinating. And I think that, it's this combination of like memories are long, but memories are also short. So you get these people who are like, well, yeah, so Prithvi Raj was the cousin of so and so, but like everyone just says cousin, but they don't say how or who or when or what degree of cousin, which doesn't actually matter. I know that, but like if you're trying to be specific, it can actually be quite hard. But then also, things like, oh, that's right, those two people were married a long time ago and they had a kid who's now in the industry, or like, oh, that person is cousins with so and so. I hadn't thought about that. You're like, yeah, so these opportunities that thousands of people are desperate to get are in fact very clearly significantly doled out to relatives. Not
Yeah,
only,
absolutely. I
but
saw your tree and
significantly.
I realized because that Raj Kapoor's wife's sister, I think, is married in Prem Chopra. Am I getting
Yeah,
that right? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, yeah. So the Chopras, the Rajendranath's family, and then the Kapoors are all related. And of course, that spins out all over the place, and like it's just. And then when you make the jump from from like the Kapoors into the like the Ashok Kumar Mukherjee family, like that family is also massive. Bengali cinema clearly has nepotism going in it, and then those are families who obviously spanned Bengali and Hindi. But this is. I don't think anyone is surprised that it is nepotistic. I think that the extent of it is really quite shocking.
Yeah, very true, very true. So how long does it take you to do this, or did it take you to put this entire thing
It,
together and update it?
yeah, so I just add to it every now and then when I learn something. And people are very generous about updating me. And they're like, you forgot so and so. I'm like, oh my God, I did forget so and so. But also, you go down one rabbit hole to try to finish it and you forget where you even started. So then you can go off somewhere else. Um, yeah, how long did it take? I don't know. Maybe I would say maybe like a whole day to get the basic thing in place. But then every now and then I spend another couple of hours trying to add to it. And I'm not consistent in this, I admit, but I try to sort of double check things people tell me. These people will say, oh, so and so is their aunt. And I'm like, but what does that mean? Like, how? Because also, if you just say aunt and you don't look to see what's in the middle, you might miss someone who is also in the film industry. So, like, I try to figure it out. And I think at this point in our lives, Wikipedia, obviously, people know about correcting Wikipedia. So I'm not saying it's an infallible source, but I feel like often it is a really good starting point. But then if you Google long enough, you find interviews with the people themselves and they'll say it, and like that's good, that's fine. But then you'll get ones where like Sonam Kapoor says, oh yeah, my family is related to the other Kapoors, and you're like, but how? Somebody tell me how. So it is really complicated, and I'm sure that a lot of this material is out there in Hindi, right? Very, very understandably so someone who is fluent should really run with this, because it would be much richer for someone who really knew what they were doing, which is not me.
No, I think you've done a great job with it. It's pretty thorough, and I think from what I'm hearing, it's a lot of dedication.
I find it really interesting, right? I wouldn't do it if I didn't find it interesting. Like I just and again, as someone who still has a lot to learn about some of this, I always am finding people I didn't know about, or what did I find most recently? Like Juhi Chawla through marriage is related to, I'm forgetting who, but like she's now on the tree. So
I want to know
again, like
now. I'm dying to
I
know.
just yeah, I'm gonna open it up while we talk and I'll see.
Yeah, 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 please, yeah.
Um
See, this is so
she
addictive, this stuff.
is, I know it really is. And then
Yeah.
it's just kind of, and like even people, so she's an interesting example because obviously I say obviously, my understanding is she came to the film industry through beauty pageants and modeling. So you when you see that, you're like, oh, maybe that person is not connected by family. You're like, no, they're still connected by family. Okay, so Juhi Chawla's husband's cousin is married to Hema Malini's niece.
Oh, okay.
How do you like that? So it's a
Yeah.
stretch, right? It is a stretch. And so therefore, okay, so I think Juhi Chawla was well established before she was married, right?
Right,
So
right, right.
so
Yeah.
that's not an example of nepotism, but it is an
Yeah.
example of like industries coming together. Yeah.
Mm.
And so like when Dharmendra's grandson married Bimal Roy's great granddaughter, for example, right? So now they're, so the Roys were already on the tree. So then this brought in the deals, and then they go all over the place, right? So
Yeah.
never just one. It's not, and I didn't know that Dharmendra's brother was also an actor. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of this too, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I did know that, but like that person was famous for 2 years in the 80s and we've completely forgotten about them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
They're
like
not.
it's
Mm.
not always at the front of everyone's mind. Understandably, it doesn't need to be, but for me, it's news. So I'm like, ooh.
No, no, even for a lot of us, we don't know a
Yeah,
lot of
I've had a
things.
lot of people message me and say, I had no idea. I'm like, I can see why, because why would you keep all this in your brain? I have to look it up. Like I did this 4 weeks ago or whatever, and I already had to look it up, like, because I can't remember. Or like when you start looking at Mahesh Bhatt, for example, right? Like that's a whole complex. The bots are very complicated. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah, because you even put
So,
in all the affairs or the alleged affairs. So all that is
yeah.
also there with hearts. So yeah,
Yeah, people get mad at me about that sometime, and I'm like, listen, this is about first and foremost influence. So if you think that is not related to influence, I have some news for you. And it can be for both good and bad, right? Like people can get shunned after a breakup, or they are no longer given opportunities, but also let's be realistic. So
yeah, nice. It's nice to hear about
it's
it firsthand, how it works. Yeah, Beth, I could just go on talking to you, but I guess we have to stop sometime. But finally, I'm just going to throw this at you. If you had to
Yeah.
make a Bollywood party playlist, what would be your
Oh,
favorite songs?
oh gosh.
See, I
Um,
didn't ask you this before, so that's what I'm saying. I'm just picking
no, that's
from you.
fun. That's
Yeah.
fun. My taste is a little bit on the vintage side, as will not surprise anybody. Do you know what I was listening to the other day? It was the Bluffmaster soundtrack from 2005 or whatever that was. Still great.
Yeah.
So I would put a lot of those on there. I would put, I don't know, I would put some of the Gangs of Wasseypur songs on there. I would probably put some of the Love, Sex, or Doka songs on there. Um, I mean, no one's going to come to me for like music planning purposes, I don't think, but I don't know. I have a whole, like on YouTube, I have a whole filmy disco playlist that has like 80 some songs, and I crowdsourced that, right? Like this is not me inventing them. I love a lot of the disco. Um, so it would be a mix for sure, for sure. And it would be a different list. It's like, people on Twitter are always doing these brackets of songs. And I see these arguments happen about you're not voting for the song, you're voting for the picturization of the song. Like, I think that's really interesting too. So if my playlist was video, it would probably be different than if it was just the music. So it's complicated, right? And I don't think it's necessarily, the songs are enjoyed both ways, right? They are enjoyed just as songs that you hear in the auto or whatever, but they are also enjoyed in with their picturization, either in the film, or now it's so easy to watch songs without the context of their films. Like they have these very different lives. So I think kind of what's the media of your the medium of your playlist would probably change things.
What
But
about
yeah,
some songs from the 70s and 80s? Any
oh
favorites there?
gosh, I mean, yeah, it's a lot of those disco ones are great to me. I'm terrible with song titles too, so I'm just thinking through some things. Oh, the Kawalis in Amar Akbar Anthony, I love. Oh, I rewatched Kurbani recently. Up Jessicoy would have to be on any playlist that I do, right? Like those are some of those Feroz Khan songs are so amazing. Like it's just yeah, so many.
Yeah. Okay, Beth, tell me, if somebody wants to get introduced to Bollywood, what are the top, five or two or
Oh,
whatever movies that they should start
yeah.
with?
So I always try to find out what the person is interested in, more, like what other kinds of movies they like, because it can just be such a, like no one would have said, what this white American woman will love, Mujzi Dosti Kurogi. No one would ever have said that, and yet that is the first movie I watched, and it did work. So like these things happen. But Paheli is one I have recommended to a lot of people because I think since it is sort of a fairy tale, I think that if you are new to Indian cinema, that aspect of being kind of that fable and all, like that really can provide like the way into how beautiful it is, and how there's a ghost obviously and things like that. So I think that can really help, because you're not a lot of Americans are like, oh, it's not realistic that people break into song, and you're like, who cares? Like, we deal with non-realistic all the time, but that argument becomes invalidated when you're dealing with a fairy tale, right? So like that is really helpful, I think. um that's when I've had people watch. I believe I have actually recommended Gangs of Wasseypur to a few people if I know they like, kind of crime gangster things. Um, I have I have introduced people to it with um Bunty or Bubbly, I think is a fun one, again, because it's just like a fun caper and you've got disguises. So again, like it's
Yeah.
not supposed to be super realistic in terms of like plot or something like that. So I think that works pretty well for people. And I will say Amitabh Bachchan is not someone I talk about a whole lot, interestingly, but I do very much like him. And I think he is a person who works well. I've met a lot of Americans who respond very favorably to him, I will say. So like his kind of that, angry young man, that translates really well, I think. So like I think Sholay would actually be is a strong recommendation for a lot of people, especially if they like Westerns. So that one works pretty well. I have thought about things like, I've never tried this, but like Jaan, I think would be really lovely for some people if they like kind of period drama type things. Because again, the razzle dazzle is gorgeous, and like, what's better than Rekha? Like nothing is better than Rekha. So And again, if you are a person who has a little bit of trouble getting your brain around song and dance, okay, well, she's a courtesan, so there's going to be song and dance, and like, so that just gives that a context that most people have no trouble with. So those are some that I have tried or thought about trying before. But yeah, I very often, Paheli is my number one go-to for a recommendation for at least for Western audiences to give it a try. So
It's a great list, very diverse, covers pretty much everything.
I think that, I mean, and that is one of the great things about Indian cinema, and I am using Indian specifically, right? Like there is something for everyone. Like just last night, I was watching film about 10 years from about 10 years old by the Bengali director Q Tasher Desh. That's an adaptation of Tagore's play. You know, that movie, I have not decided what I think about it yet. I kind of just let it wash over me. But like, so that couldn't be further from Bollywood in a lot of ways, right? So like here, of course, a country as big as India with as many different cultures is making many kinds of films. And like, you know, I think it's important that the rest of the world is at least aware of that, even if they don't really try any. I hope they'll try some, but like, you know, there's something for everyone. If you like movies, there's something for you.
Yeah, I can see, like, Beth really loves Bollywood. Sorry, that sounds cheesy, but
No, it is. I mean,
it's
I've
true.
thought about it is true. And I know there are issues with the word Bollywood, and I do understand that. And part of me wishes I had known that before I named my blog, but I like branded myself in a way. But I try to make I try very hard to learn more than Bollywood, but also Bollywood.
Yeah. No, I'm following you on Twitter and everywhere else, as you can see. And, and thank you, Beth. I think we'll end now, but I'm going to be
Okay.
looking forward to seeing what you think of Jawan. You're going to be watching that, right?
Oh
So,
yeah, I
yeah.
can't wait. Can't believe it's less than a week. I'm very
Yeah,
excited.
yeah. So probably you and Peter will discuss this on Filmi Ladies.
We will be. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure we'll do it.
yeah. So I look forward to that, or I'll catch you on the
Great.
Khandan podcast. Or okay, thanks so much, Beth, for doing this. This is
Thank you.
great
This was
fun.
really fun. Thank you.
Yeah.